Captain Jin Seo-jun sat in the back row of the Galactic Council chambers, his dress uniform crisp and spotless. The massive hall stretched before him, filled with representatives from hundreds of worlds. Floating holographic displays showed star maps and fleet positions. The air hummed with translation devices converting dozens of languages into a symphony of diplomatic chatter. He checked his chronometer. 3 hours into the session about military modernization, and nobody had asked Earth's opinion once. Ambassador Liu Wei-ming shifted uncomfortably in the seat beside him. Earth's diplomatic representative was a patient man, but even he seemed tired of being ignored. The morning's speakers had all praised the Zephyrian Empire's advanced defense systems, energy shields that could stop any weapon, automated fleets that fought without risking organic lives, AI networks that calculated battle tactics faster than any biological brain. High Counselor Vex Thara stood at the central podium, her tall frame elegant in flowing robes that shifted color with her mood. The Zephyrian leader's voice carried easily through the chamber's acoustics. "The age of primitive warfare has ended," she declared. "No longer do we need soldiers carrying crude weapons into battle. No longer do we risk precious lives in dangerous combat. Our technology provides perfect protection for all civilized species." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Representatives nodded and activated their voting displays to show support. "Some species," Vex Thara continued, her gaze sweeping over the human delegation, "still cling to ancient military traditions. They maintain expensive armies. They train soldiers for combat that will never come. They preserve weapons and tactics from darker times in galactic history." Jin felt his jaw tighten. Around the chamber, other delegates turned to look at the human section. Some faces showed curiosity. Others displayed the polite pity reserved for beings who could not accept progress. "These efforts are admirable from a cultural preservation standpoint," the High Counselor said. "Museums need artifacts. Historians require examples of how warfare was conducted before enlightenment reached the galaxy. But let us not pretend that such quaint customs have any practical value in modern times." A few delegates chuckled. Ambassador Liu's hands clenched on his seat armrests. General Korthak rose from the Bruthan delegation's section. The massive alien's scarred hide told stories of battles fought before Zephyrian protection came to his homeworld. His voice rumbled through the chamber like distant thunder. "High Counselor, with respect, some of us remember what war was like before your empire's shields protected us. The humans fought beside my people. In the sector, 7 conflicts. Their soldiers showed courage and skill that saved many Bruthan lives." "Indeed," Vex Thara replied smoothly. "Historical records confirm human military competence in past conflicts. But that was centuries ago, before modern technology made such crude methods unnecessary. Today, we have better solutions." She gestured to a holographic display showing gleaming Zephyrian warships. Their sleek hulls bristled with energy weapons and projected shimmering defensive barriers. "Our automated defense fleets respond to threats within microseconds. Our AI networks coordinate perfectly without organic limitations like fear or fatigue. Our energy shields render kinetic weapons useless. Why would any rational species choose inferior methods when superior alternatives exist?" More nods and agreements. Several delegates began discussing budget reallocations away from traditional military forces. Jin's communication device vibrated softly. A message from Admiral Park back on Earth. "Watching the session. Orders are to observe only. Do not engage unless directly addressed." The captain understood the reasoning. Earth had learned hard lessons about speaking too forcefully in galactic politics. Better to let others make their points and avoid seeming aggressive or primitive. But listening to humanity's military heritage dismissed as useless museum pieces tested his patience. "Perhaps," suggested Counselor Thexville from the Meridian Systems, "the less advanced species could redirect their military budgets toward agricultural development. The galaxy always needs more food production. Laughter rippled through the chamber. Even some of the human delegation's neighbors smiled at the suggestion. Dr. Chen Yujin, Earth's xenobiologist observer, leaned forward and whispered to Ambassador Liu. The irony is that their automated systems have never faced a real test. 3 centuries of peace under Zephyrian protection means they've forgotten what happens when technology fails. Liu nodded slightly but maintained his diplomatic expression. Vexthara raised her hand for silence. This discussion illustrates my point perfectly. Some species adapt to progress. Others remain trapped in the past, clinging to legends of their former glory. The humans were once formidable warriors. Yes, but that time has ended. Today, they are legends of old. Nothing more. The phrase hung in the air like a challenge. Several delegates turned again to study the human delegation, their expressions mixing curiosity with something approaching sympathy. Lieutenant Park Min-jun, Jin's aide, made a small sound of protest. The young officer's hand moved instinctively toward where a sidearm would rest if they were anywhere but a diplomatic facility. Jin placed a calming hand on his aide's shoulder. "Easy," he murmured in Korean. General Korthak stood again. "Hi, Counselor. Perhaps we should remember that diversity of approach strengthens collective defense. If every species follows identical methods—" "General," Vexthara interrupted, "your concerns are noted. But efficiency demands optimization. Resources wasted on obsolete military traditions could better serve education, medicine, or cultural development." The vote proceeded as expected. Motion passed overwhelmingly to recommend military budget reductions for technologically primitive species. Earth's delegation abstained, following established diplomatic protocol. As delegates began filing out for recess, Jin watched the Zephyrian representatives cluster around their displays, reviewing fleet positions and automated system reports. Their confidence was absolute. 3 centuries without serious warfare had convinced them that their technological solutions were perfect. Ambassador Liu gathered his materials slowly. "Captain, your thoughts on the session?" Jin considered his words carefully. "They believe their technology makes soldiers unnecessary. History suggests that such confidence often comes just before someone learns why it was misplaced. You think their systems have vulnerabilities?" "All systems have vulnerabilities, Ambassador. The question is whether anyone remembers what to do when the systems fail." As they walked toward the exit, General Korthak intercepted them. The massive Bruthan moved with surprising grace for someone his size. "Captain Jin," he said quietly, "my people remember fighting beside yours. We have not forgotten the value of warriors who think for themselves." Jin nodded respectfully. "Thank you, General. Let us hope such memories remain only history lessons." But something in the veteran's scarred features suggested he shared Jin's unease about the galaxy's complete dependence on automated protection. Outside the chamber, news feeds already carried headlines about the session. Galactic Council recommends military modernization. Primitive warfare methods declared obsolete. Experts agree. Age of soldiers has ended. Jin read the reports on his datapad as they walked back to the human delegation's quarters. The galaxy had spoken. Humanity's military traditions were relics of a darker past, kept alive only for historical curiosity. He wondered how long that assessment would remain accurate. The emergency session alarm woke Captain Jin Seo-jun at 0347 local time. Red lights flashed in the corridors of the diplomatic quarters as he pulled on his uniform and rushed toward the council chambers. Other delegates hurried through the halls, many still in sleeping clothes, their faces showing confusion and fear. Ambassador Liu met him at the chamber entrance. "What's the situation?" "What's the situation?" "Unknown." The alert just said, "Immediate galactic security threat," and ordered all military advisors to report immediately. Inside the council chambers, chaos reigned. Holographic displays showed star maps covered in red warning indicators. Communication channels crackled with distress calls in dozens of languages. High Counselor Vex Thara stood at the central podium, her color-shifting robes now a deep crimson that matched her emotional state. "Order!" she called out. "We need order to address this crisis." Dr. Chen Yujin slipped into the seat beside Jin, her xenobiology credentials having earned her emergency access. "Captain, I've been monitoring the deep space sensor networks. Something is coming from the dark matter regions. Something big." General Korthak's booming voice cut through the chatter. "High Counselor, my homeworld's outer defense stations have gone silent. Complete communication blackout. 15 minutes ago. The Meridian system reports the same," added Counselor Thexville, his usual composure cracking. "Our automated fleets were investigating unusual energy readings. Now, we cannot reach them." Vex Thara activated the main display. A three-dimensional star map appeared, showing the galaxy's spiral arms. Red zones marked areas of lost communication, spreading outward from the dark matter regions like an infection. 47 star systems have lost contact in the past 6 hours, she announced. "Our long-range sensors detect massive energy signatures moving through space, but they do not match any known technology or natural phenomenon." Lieutenant Park Min-jun leaned forward in his seat. "Sir, those movement patterns, they're not random. Something is deliberately targeting our communication networks and defense installations." A new communication channel opened, broadcasting from the edge of the affected zone. The hologram showed a Zephyrian fleet commander, his usual calm shattered by panic. "Council Command. This is Admiral Zex Ran with the 3rd Defense Fleet. We are under attack by unknown entities. They appear to be composed of pure energy, capable of phasing through our shields and armor. Our weapons are ineffective. Repeat, conventional weapons have no effect on these things." The transmission dissolved into static. Dr. Chen accessed her research files on her datapad. "High Counselor, I believe we are facing the Void Wraiths." Silence fell over the chamber. Even the translation devices seemed to pause. "Explain," Vex Thara ordered. Chen stood, her voice steady despite the gravity of her words. "Ancient legends from the pre-spaceflight era mention energy beings that fed on advanced technology and consciousness itself. Every major civilization has similar stories. We dismissed them as mythology, but the descriptions match what we're seeing." "Mythology cannot disable our defense fleets," protested Counselor Thexville. "These entities consume electronic systems," Chen continued. "They grow stronger by absorbing energy weapons, fire, and AI networks. According to the legends, they feed on technological complexity. The more advanced the system, the more it nourishes them." General Korthak's scarred face had gone pale. "If that is true, then our entire defense strategy is compromised. Our fleets are fully automated. Our weapons are pure energy. Our shields generate electromagnetic barriers." "Precisely," Chen said. "We have created the perfect feeding ground for creatures that consume technology." More distress calls flooded the communication channels. Zephyrian fleets throughout the galaxy reported similar attacks. Automated defense systems turned against their operators. Energy shields became doorways for the invading entities. AI networks screamed electronic death cries as they were consumed. Ambassador Liu activated his communication link to Earth. "Terra Command. This is Embassy Station. Request immediate strategic assessment of current galactic crisis." The response came within minutes. Admiral Park's weathered face appeared on the display, broadcasting from Earth's Strategic Command Center. "Embassy. We've been monitoring the situation. Initial analysis suggests these entities are immune to energy-based attacks and grow stronger when exposed to advanced AI systems. Our xenoarchaeology teams have been studying similar legends from our own pre-spaceflight period." "Recommendations, Admiral?" Liu asked. We're preparing contingency plans based on historical precedent. If these are the same entities described in ancient texts, conventional technology will be useless against them. Traditional warfare methods may be required. Several delegates turned to stare at the human section. The same representatives who had mocked Earth's obsolete military traditions just days earlier now looked to them with desperate hope. High Counselor Vex's Thara's robes had shifted to deep purple, indicating extreme stress. Are you suggesting that primitive weapons might be effective where our advanced systems have failed? Admiral Park's expression remained neutral. I'm suggesting that diversity of approach provides multiple options for addressing threats. Earth's military doctrine has always maintained both traditional and modern capabilities. This is absurd, declared Counselor Thexville. Kinetic weapons and chemical explosives cannot be superior to energy-based systems that have protected the galaxy for centuries. Another communication channel activated. This time, the voice belonged to a Bruthan military commander, broadcasting from a besieged frontier world. Any ships, any fleet, please respond. The creatures have consumed our defense grid. Our energy weapons feed them. Our AI systems are being devoured. We need help with weapons that don't rely on static. The chamber fell silent again. Red warning indicators spread across more star systems on the main display. The void wraiths were accelerating their advance. Growing stronger, with each technological system they consumed. Dr. Chen pulled up additional research files. The ancient texts describe successful resistance using what they called dead metal weapons, kinetic projectiles, chemical explosives, manually operated systems that couldn't be consumed or corrupted. You mean the kind of weapons you humans still maintain? Asked General Korthak quietly. Jin felt all eyes turned toward him. The same delegates who had dismissed humanity as legends of old now waited for his response to their technological nightmare. He stood slowly, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Earth's military doctrine has always been built on redundancy. We never abandoned kinetic weapons because we understood that every system has weaknesses. We maintained manual targeting because we knew AI networks could fail. We trained soldiers to fight without technological support because we remembered that battles are ultimately won by thinking beings making difficult decisions. Are you saying your primitive military could fight these entities? Vex Thara asked. I'm saying that what you call primitive, we call time-tested. Our weapons don't rely on energy that can be consumed. Our soldiers don't depend on AI networks that can be corrupted. Our tactics assume that enemy will adapt to our technology, so we maintain the ability to adapt in return. The main display flashed with new warning signals. 17 more systems had gone dark. Ambassador Liu stepped forward. High Counselor, Earth formally requests permission to deploy our expeditionary forces to assist in galactic defense. The chamber erupted in debate. Some delegates protested that primitive weapons were useless. Others argued that conventional approaches had already failed completely. But as more star systems went silent and more fleets fell to the void wraiths, the mathematical reality became clear. Advanced technology was feeding the enemy. Traditional methods offered the only untested option. General Korthak stood and activated his voting display in support of the human proposal. My people remember fighting beside Earth's soldiers. If their legends speak truth, then these void wraiths have never faced warriors who fight with both ancient wisdom and modern determination. The vote was closer than anyone expected. Fear of the unknown entities outweighed technological pride by the narrowest margin. Permission granted. As delegates filed out to contact their homeworlds, Jin remained in the chamber studying the tactical displays. The red zones of void wraith activity surrounded the galaxy's core systems like a closing fist. Lieutenant Park approached him. Sir? Orders from Terra Command? Jin watched another star system disappear from the communication grid. Prepare for deployment, Lieutenant. The galaxy is about to learn whether legends of old can become legends of the present. The Earth Expeditionary Force assembled at Luna Station while the galaxy watched in fascination and desperation. Captain Jin Seo-jun stood on the observation deck, studying the fleet that would carry humanity into battle against entities that had consumed every advanced military force they encountered. The ships looked primitive compared to sleek Zephyrian vessels. Angular hulls covered in armor plating instead of smooth, energy-absorbing surfaces. Weapon turrets that physically rotated rather than projecting energy fields. Communication arrays, with mechanical backups when electronic systems failed. But Jin knew these apparent weaknesses were actually strengths against enemies that fed on technological sophistication. Colonel Kim Hae-jin, commander of the Expeditionary Force, joined him at the viewing window. Her combat armor bore the scars of training exercises conducted in environments where energy weapons and electronic systems were deliberately disabled. "Status report, Colonel?" Jin asked. "All battalions ready for deployment. Kinetic weapons loaded with tungsten penetrators. Chemical explosives prepped for manual detonation. Communication systems operating on analog backup frequencies. Every soldier trained for combat, without AI support or energy weapon assistance." Through the window, they watched Marines loading equipment that looked like museum pieces to most galactic observers. Projectile rifles, chemical grenades, manually operated mortars, weapons that required human skill and judgment rather than computer targeting. Dr. Chen Yu-jin approached them, her research datapad showing tactical analysis of void wraith behavior patterns. "Colonel, I've been studying the enemy engagement reports. These entities seem confused by unpredictable tactics. They adapt quickly to systematic approaches, but struggle with organic decision-making. Which explains why automated fleets failed so completely," Kim replied. "AI systems follow logical patterns. These creatures learn to predict and counter those patterns. But human soldiers make decisions based on instinct, experience, and improvisation." On the main communications channel, reports continued streaming in from across the galaxy. The Meridian Defense Fleet had attempted to fight the Void Wraiths using modified energy weapons. The entities had consumed the modifications and grown stronger. The Altarian Republic tried deploying their most advanced AI generals. The Wraiths had absorbed the AI networks and used them to coordinate more effective attacks against defending forces. Ambassador Liu's voice came through the ship's communication system. "Captain Jin, you have a priority transmission from the Galactic Council." Jin activated his personal communicator. High Counselor Vex Thara appeared on the display. Her color-shifting robes, now a desperate shade of deep blue. "Captain, I must ask directly. Do you truly believe your primitive weapons can succeed where our advanced systems have failed?" "High Counselor, they're not primitive. They're simply different. A kinetic projectile doesn't become obsolete because energy weapons exist. It becomes an alternative solution for different problems. But surely your human technology has advanced beyond ancient gunpowder weapons?" "Of course. But we never forgot the lessons those weapons taught us. Every round must be aimed by a thinking being, making real-time decisions. Every explosive must be placed by someone who understands terrain and timing. Every tactical choice requires human judgment, weighing dozens of variables simultaneously." Behind Vex's Thera, Jin could see Zephyrian military advisors studying displays showing the complete failure of their automated fleets. Their perfect technology had become perfect food for the enemy. General Korthak's massive form appeared beside the High Counselor. "Captain, the Bruthan Defense Corps is preparing to support your operations with whatever forces we can deploy using non-electronic systems." "Appreciated, General. Coordinate with Colonel Kim for integration planning." The transmission ended, leaving Jin to contemplate the irony. For centuries, the galaxy had moved toward complete automation and energy-based systems. Organic soldiers were seen as inefficient. Manual weapons were considered wasteful. Traditional tactics were dismissed as outdated thinking. Now those outdated approaches represented their only hope. Sergeant Major Wang Chen joined the group at the observation window. The veteran non-commissioned officer had trained 3 generations of soldiers in what the galaxy called primitive combat methods. Sir, the troops are asking questions about enemy capabilities. What should I tell them about fighting creatures made of pure energy? Tell them the same thing we told them about fighting any enemy, Kim replied. Find what they need to survive and deny it to them. Find what they fear and use it against them. Adapt faster than they can counter-adapt. And if our weapons don't work either? Jin turned from the window to face the sergeant major. Then we improvise. That's what human soldiers do. We find ways to complete the mission even when the plan fails and the equipment breaks. Through the station's communication systems, they could hear the final transmissions from the Cygnus Defense Fleet. The Void Wraiths had consumed the entire force, growing visibly larger and more coordinated with each technological system they absorbed. Lieutenant Park Min-jun approached with updated tactical reports. Sir, intelligence estimates suggest the entities are coordinating through some kind of shared consciousness. They're not just randomly feeding on technology. They're systematically eliminating defensive capabilities to clear paths toward major population centers. Strategic thinking, Chen observed. Not just instinctive behavior. Which means they can be outthought, Kim added. No creature is invincible if you understand how it thinks and what it needs. The fleet's departure countdown began. Across Luna Station, human soldiers made final preparations for combat against enemies that had never faced projectile weapons or chemically powered explosives. Equipment checks were performed manually. Communication protocols were tested using analog systems. Tactical plans were memorized rather than stored in potentially vulnerable computer networks. Jin watched through the observation windows as other species' ships fled from the advancing Void Wraiths. Sleek vessels with perfect energy shields and devastating plasma weapons ran for the outer rim, abandoning entire star systems to avoid contact with entities that turned their own technology against them. But Earth's expeditionary force moved toward the danger. Colonel Kim activated the fleet-wide communication system, her voice reaching every human soldier preparing for deployment. All personnel, this is Colonel Kim. Today we march toward an enemy that has defeated every advanced military force in the galaxy. They have consumed fleets that were bigger, faster, and more heavily armed than ours. They have absorbed AI networks with processing power beyond our comprehension. They have turned the galaxy's greatest technological achievements into their own weapons. She paused, letting her words register. But they have never fought human soldiers. They have never faced warriors who think for themselves, adapt to changing conditions, and refuse to quit when the odds seem impossible. They have never encountered beings who combine ancient wisdom with modern determination. Through the ship's hull, Jin could feel the vibration of engines powering up. Chemical rockets that couldn't be absorbed or corrupted by energy-feeding entities. Navigation systems with manual backup controls. Life support operated by trained technicians rather than automated networks. We are not primitive, Kim continued. We are prepared. We are not obsolete. We are ready for any challenge. The galaxy called us legends of old. Today we show them what legends can accomplish when they march into the fire. The fleet began moving, each ship following courses calculated by human navigators using instruments that would function regardless of electromagnetic interference or technological consumption. Behind them, Luna Station's crew watched on manual telescopes as the angular human vessels accelerated toward battles that had destroyed every other military force. Jin felt the familiar weight of kinetic ammunition and chemical explosives in the ship's armory. Simple tools that required human skill to use effectively. Ancient principles, applied with modern precision. Traditional warfare adapted for contemporary challenges. The Void Wraiths had never fought soldiers who remembered how to win without perfect technology. They were about to learn why that knowledge mattered. The Nexus system had become a graveyard of advanced technology. Floating debris from Zephyrian fleets drifted through space like metallic snow. Energy-drained hulks of once mighty warships tumbled slowly past the human fleet as it approached the Void Wraith's stronghold. Captain Jin So-jun studied the tactical display from the bridge of the Expeditionary Force flagship. The readings showed what remained of 6 different galactic defense fleets, all consumed by entities that grew stronger with every technological system they absorbed. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported the sensor operator. Using manual instruments that couldn't be corrupted by electromagnetic interference. Multiple energy signatures, consistent with Void Wraith profiles. Colonel Kim Hae-jin activated the ship's analog communication system, her voice reaching every vessel in the human fleet. All ships, this is Colonel Kim. Remember your training. These creatures feed on energy weapons and electronic systems. We deny them that food. Kinetic weapons only. Manual targeting only. Think faster than they can adapt. Through the bridge windows, Jin watched the first Void Wraiths emerge from the debris field. They looked like living shadows, outlined in dark energy, roughly humanoid but shifting constantly between solid and ethereal states. Where they touched the floating wreckage of destroyed ships, metal simply dissolved into component atoms. Range to primary targets? Kim asked. 30,000 kilometers, and closing, came the reply from the weapons officer, reading mechanical gauges rather than electronic displays. All batteries, load kinetic penetrators. Prepare for manual targeting. The human ships spread into combat formation, each vessel operating independently to avoid predictable patterns. No AI coordination, no networked targeting systems. Every captain and weapons operator making individual decisions based on training and experience. The Void Wraiths seemed confused by the approach. They had grown accustomed to facing automated fleets that followed logical, tactical algorithms. Human ships moved erratically, changing course and speed seemingly at random, making decisions that defied computational prediction. First contact in 10 seconds, announced the tactical officer. Jin watched as the lead human destroyer opened fire with its kinetic cannons. Tungsten penetrators accelerated by chemical propellants streaked through space at enormous velocity. No energy signatures to consume. No electronic guidance systems to corrupt. Just dense metal, moving very fast, in straight lines. The first rounds punched through a Void Wraith that had tried to phase shift to avoid them. The entity recoiled in surprise, its energy form flickering as kinetic impacts disrupted its coherence in ways energy weapons never could. Target hit, called the weapons officer. Kinetic rounds are effective. Across the fleet, human gunners opened fire with weapons that seemed primitive compared to galactic standards, but proved devastatingly effective against enemies adapted to consuming advanced technology. Chemical explosives detonated among Wraith formations, creating pressure waves and metal fragments that couldn't be absorbed or redirected. But the Void Wraiths adapted quickly. They began coordinating their movements, using their shared consciousness to predict human tactics. Several entities merged together into larger forms that could withstand kinetic impacts. Others attempted to possess the human ships directly. Wraith attempting boarding action on Gundeck 7, came the report over internal communications. Jin grabbed his sidearm and headed for the affected section. The weapon in his hand was a chemical-powered projectile launcher that had been in continuous military service for over 4 centuries. Simple, reliable, impossible to corrupt or consume. He reached Gundeck 7 to find Marines already engaging the boarding Wraith with small arms fire. The entity writhed and flickered as bullets passed through it, clearly uncomfortable with kinetic impacts but not yet destroyed. "Sir," called Sergeant Major Wang Chen, "conventional rounds are having limited effect on the larger entities." Jin studied the Wraith as it attempted to possess one of the gun turrets. Where it touched the manual mechanical systems, nothing happened. The creature couldn't interface with purely analog technology. "Switch to explosive rounds," he ordered. "Target its core mass concentration." The Marines adjusted their weapons and opened fire with ammunition designed for breaching operations. Chemical explosives detonated inside the Wraith's energy form, disrupting its coherence from within. The entity let out what might have been a scream across electromagnetic frequencies before dissipating completely. Boarding threat eliminated, Jin reported to the bridge. The battle continued throughout the system. Human ships used tactics that seemed insane to galactic observers monitoring from safe distances. They flew directly at enemy formations. They engaged in close-range combat where energy-feeding entities should have been most dangerous. They coordinated through voice communication and hand signals when necessary. But it worked. Commander Oh Soo-jin led a squadron of human fighters against a massive void wraith that had consumed an entire Zephyrian battlecruiser. Her craft carried no energy weapons or electronic targeting systems. Instead, they were armed with kinetic cannons and chemical rockets that required skilled pilots to aim manually. Attack pattern Omega, she transmitted to her squadron. Individual targeting. No formation flying. Deny them predictable movement patterns. The fighters scattered in seemingly random directions, each pilot making independent decisions about attack angles and timing. The Wraith tried to coordinate a response through its absorbed AI systems, but found itself unable to predict or counter 12 different human pilots all thinking differently. Oh Soo-jin dove her fighter directly at the creature's core, firing kinetic rounds at point-blank range. The tungsten penetrators tore through energy fields that would have absorbed and redirected any plasma or laser attack. Her wingman followed up with chemical rockets that exploded within the entity's form, causing visible disruption to its energy matrix. Multiple impacts on primary target, she reported. Creature is showing structural damage from kinetic strikes. Across the battle zone, similar engagements played out as human forces demonstrated the effectiveness of traditional warfare against enemies adapted only to technological combat. Every bullet had to be aimed by a human brain making split-second calculations. Every explosive had to be placed by someone who understood timing and physics. Every tactical decision required organic judgment weighing dozens of variables simultaneously. The Void Wraith Prime, an ancient consciousness that had devoured countless civilizations, found itself facing something unprecedented. These human warriors didn't rely on the technological sophistication it was designed to consume. They fought with tools and methods that predated most galactic civilizations. Jin received a communication from Dr. Chen, who was monitoring the battle from the fleet's medical vessel. Captain, the entities are showing signs of confusion. They're attempting to consume technologies that don't exist in our equipment. They can't adapt to purely kinetic weapons because there's nothing to absorb or corrupt. Keep monitoring. These creatures have intelligence. They'll find ways to counter us if we give them time. The tide of battle shifted as human forces pressed their advantage. Ships that looked primitive proved more maneuverable than automated vessels. Weapons that seemed obsolete delivered impacts that energy-feeding entities couldn't process or counter. Most importantly, human soldiers made tactical decisions faster than the Wraiths could predict or adapt to organic thinking patterns. But the largest Void Wraiths were learning. They began targeting the human ship's life support systems and propulsion rather than trying to corrupt their weapons. They started using the absorbed technology from destroyed galactic fleets as projectile weapons against human forces. The battle had become a contest between ancient warfare methods and adaptive alien intelligence. Each side sought advantages, the other couldn't counter. Jin realized the conflict would be decided not by superior firepower, but by which force could outthink and outadapt the other faster. The Void Wraith Prime began moving directly toward the human flagship, apparently deciding to face these strange warriors personally. The Void Wraith Prime approached the human flagship like a living storm of dark energy. It had absorbed the consciousness of entire civilizations, devoured the most advanced AI networks in galactic history, and consumed technologies beyond organic comprehension. Now it faced creatures that fought with methods older than most starfaring species. Captain Jin Seo-jun stood on the bridge watching the ancient entity grow larger in the observation windows. Around him, his crew maintained their stations using manual controls and analog instruments that couldn't be corrupted or consumed. "Distance to primary target?" he asked. 5 kilometers and closing, reported the sensor operator. Entity appears to be attempting direct interface with our hull. All sections. Prepare for boarding action, Jin announced over the ship's communication system. Remember your training. These creatures can't process purely kinetic weapons or analog systems. Fight smart, not just hard. Colonel Kim Hae-jin appeared on the bridge carrying her personal sidearm and combat gear. Captain, I'm leading the boarding defense teams. The entity seems focused on you specifically. Understood. It's probably trying to understand how organic consciousness differs from the AI networks it's consumed. Through the ship's hull, they could feel vibrations as the Void Wraith Prime made contact. Emergency lighting activated as the creature's presence interfered with some electronic systems, but the ship's manual backups kept essential functions operating. Jin checked his equipment one final time. Chemical-powered sidearm with explosive rounds. Combat knife forged from simple steel. Communication device with analog backup frequencies. Tools that worked regardless of electromagnetic interference or technological consumption. The entity manifested in the ship's central corridor as a shifting mass of dark energy roughly 3 meters tall. Where it touched the walls, metal began dissolving at the atomic level. But when it tried to interface with the ship's manual control systems, nothing happened. The creature couldn't consume purely mechanical technology. Jin approached the Void Wraith Prime with his weapon drawn but not aimed. Around him, Marine squads took defensive positions, using kinetic weapons and chemical explosives. You are different. The entity spoke directly into their minds, its voice like the echo of dying stars. Your tools do not sing with electronic consciousness. Your weapons do not pulse with energy patterns. Your thoughts do not follow algorithmic pathways. We're human, Jin replied simply. We think. For ourselves. Impossible. All advanced species rely on artificial intelligence to enhance their capabilities. All modern weapons use energy projection for maximum efficiency. All contemporary warfare depends on networked coordination for optimal results. Not us. We learned that sometimes old methods work better than new ones. The Void Wraith Prime extended tendrils of energy toward Jin's equipment, trying to analyze and consume his weapons. The tendrils passed harmlessly through the kinetic ammunition and mechanical components, finding nothing to absorb or corrupt. How do you coordinate without AI networks? How do you aim without computer assistance? How do you fight without energy weapons? Jin gestured to the Marines around him. We use our brains. We rely on training and experience. We adapt to changing conditions faster than any computer program. The ancient consciousness seemed genuinely confused. For millennia, it had consumed civilizations that followed predictable technological development patterns. They all eventually created AI networks. They all relied on energy weapons. They all built automated defense systems that became perfect feeding grounds for entities like the Void Wraiths. But humans had kept the old ways, alongside the new. You are inefficient, the Wraith Prime declared. Organic consciousness is slower than artificial intelligence. Kinetic weapons have shorter range than energy projection. Manual systems require more training time than automated ones. Maybe, Jin agreed. But efficiency isn't everything. Sometimes, you need flexibility. Sometimes, you need unpredictability. Sometimes you need soldiers who can think for themselves when all the computers are dead. The entity attempted to possess Jin directly, flooding his mind with the absorbed consciousness of countless consumed AI networks. But human thinking patterns proved incompatible with artificial intelligence frameworks. Jin's organic brain processed information in ways the Wraith couldn't predict or control. Your thoughts are chaotic, the creature protested. You make decisions based on incomplete information. You rely on intuition rather than calculation. You choose courses of action that are statistically suboptimal. That's called being human, Jin replied, raising his weapon. We don't always make perfect choices. But We make our own choices. He fired. The explosive round detonated within the Void Wraith Prime's energy matrix, causing massive disruption to its coherence. The ancient entity recoiled in shock as kinetic impact and chemical explosion tore through energy fields that had never encountered purely physical attacks. The creature tried to regenerate, drawing power from the absorbed AI networks and technological systems it had consumed throughout the galaxy. But every repair attempt was disrupted by additional kinetic strikes from the Marine squads surrounding it. Impossible, the Wraith Prime repeated. Advanced civilizations do not maintain primitive warfare methods. Evolution proceeds toward greater technological sophistication, not backward compatibility. First, I. 5. 5. 5. I. 2. Evolution proceeds toward survival, Jin corrected, firing again. Sometimes that means remembering what worked before. The battle throughout the ship continued, as human forces demonstrated the effectiveness of traditional warfare against enemies adapted only to technological combat. Soldiers who had trained for decades in manually aimed weapons proved more accurate than computer targeting systems. Explosive charges placed by thinking beings caused more damage than automated munitions. Most importantly, human tactics remained unpredictable because they were based on individual judgment rather than programmed responses. The Void Wraith Prime's form began fragmenting as repeated kinetic impacts disrupted its energy matrix beyond repair. The ancient consciousness that had consumed countless civilizations found itself unable to adapt to warriors who fought with both modern knowledge and ancient wisdom. Your methods should not be effective, it insisted, even as its coherence continued degrading. Logic dictates that advanced technology surpasses primitive tools in all applications. Logic doesn't account for everything, Jin replied. Sometimes you need more than logic to win. The final explosive round detonated at the creature's core, causing a cascade failure throughout its energy matrix. The Void Wraith Prime's death scream echoed across electromagnetic frequencies as it dissolved into component particles, taking with it the absorbed consciousness of every AI network it had consumed. Throughout the Nexus system, the remaining Void Wraiths lost coordination as their central intelligence was destroyed. Human forces pressed their advantage, using kinetic weapons and chemical explosives to eliminate the scattered entities before they could reorganize. Hours later, Jin stood on the bridge, watching rescue operations as human ships recovered survivors from the destroyed galactic fleets. The same vessels that had seemed primitive compared to advanced Zephyrian technology were now evacuating crews whose own ships had been consumed by technological feeding entities. Colonel Kim approached with casualty reports. Final tally, Captain. 17 ships damaged, 3 destroyed. 400 casualties, 96 fatalities. The Void Wraiths have been completely eliminated from the system. And the rescued survivors? Over 12,000 personnel recovered from disabled ships. Medical teams are providing assistance using our analog life support systems until their technology can be safely reactivated. The communication system activated with an incoming transmission from the Galactic Council. High Counselor Vex Thara appeared on the display, her color-shifting robes now a deep shade of respectful blue. Captain Jin, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally apologize for our earlier assessment of human military capabilities. Your forces have accomplished what our most advanced fleets could not. Thank you, High Counselor. But we didn't do this to prove anything. We did it because it needed to be done. General Korthak's massive form appeared beside Vex Thara. Captain, the Bruthan Defense Corps requests permission to train alongside your forces. We wish to learn traditional warfare methods as backup for our technological systems. Similar requests came from dozens of other species throughout the galaxy. The same civilizations that had mocked Earth's obsolete military traditions now sought to learn those techniques as insurance against future technological vulnerabilities. Ambassador Liu joined Jin on the bridge as more communications flooded in from across the galaxy. Captain, The Council is offering you the position of Director of Galactic Defense Traditional Warfare Division. They want human advisors to train their forces in kinetic weapons and manual tactics. Jin considered the offer while watching human ships continue rescue operations. Earth's primitive vessels had become the most valuable assets in the galaxy, not because they were more advanced, but because they were different. They represented an alternative approach that had proven essential when conventional methods failed. Accept the position, he decided. But make it clear that we're not replacing their technology. We're supplementing it. The goal is to combine the best of both approaches. As the human fleet prepared for the journey home, Jin reflected on the lessons learned. The galaxy had spent centuries moving toward complete automation and energy-based systems, dismissing traditional warfare as obsolete. But technology without backup options was just vulnerability disguised as progress. Humanity had never forgotten that battles were ultimately won by thinking beings making difficult decisions under impossible circumstances. They had preserved the knowledge that sometimes old solutions worked better than new ones against unexpected problems. The galaxy had called them legends of old. But legends, Jin realized, became legends for good reasons. They represented wisdom, tested by time, and proven effective when everything else failed. The void wraiths were gone. The galaxy was safe, and humanity had earned its place not as conquerors, but as protectors who understood that true strength came from combining ancient wisdom with modern capability. Some legends never became obsolete. They simply waited for the right moment to prove their worth again.